See, I had my first encounter with Wingdings about 10 years ago when I was in Lincoln Park. I was sitting on that bench, sucking on Popeye's chicken, and this bus goes by in the street.
Well, I remember when I was a young boy, I was reading one of the underground comics that was circulating in my neighborhood at the time. And what was so strange about it was that the font wasn't entirely in the Wingdings font.
And there was an advertisement slogan on it, but there was a picture, and I knew that it was Drano because that you can recognize that bottle anywhere. But the print, I couldn't read.
As soon as I opened the cover, I was never the same again. Just the very idea that text did not have to be text just completely blew my mind, and I knew that from that moment on I could never ever go back to just straight font again.
And I did some research, and I went on the internet and I saw all this material that had Wingdings, and it just changed my entire outlook on life. I broke up with my fiance. We had been together for like 7 years, and I just knew that the course that I was living was the wrong one. I needed to live life through Wingdings. And so when my students...
Spiritually, Wingdings is as close as I think the modern human being can get to God, or Allah, or Confucius, or whatever.
The 1950s is a very interesting time in the study of typography and typefaces in general. There was a real idealism held amongst many typographers around the world, but especially in West Berlin, after the horrors and the cataclysm of the Second World War. This endowed them with a desire to create new rational and logical typefaces, and this is where you see the emergence of certain fonts we commonly use today, like Times New Roman and Helvetica, but most importantly the emergence of Wingdings as a standard typeface used around the West. It was designed originally by a professor at the Berlin Institute of Typography named Weimar Schneckenhofer, an Austrian with a descent of Dutch on the mother's side, which many people say led him to design typefaces that had a very strong and almost engineering quality to them. However, it was eventually embraced by many of the students of the time as a counterculture, a counter typeface, if you will, to the more dry and grammatical typefaces of Arial and Arial Bold that were employed by Stalin. Once the youth across the nation realized the power that the change in these typefaces could have, they began to form various organizations to promote the use of Wingdings as the standard font for all government and general social documents. The AMTTP, or the Alliance for Modern Typeface and Typography Printing, was supported by its military wing, the FWD, the Foundation for Wingdings Distribution.
When we first started out, we were just a bunch of young kids. We didn't really know the impact that the font would have on others or ourselves. It was really more an expression of our own rebellious instincts. The country at the time was very oppressive, especially to creative individuals like myself and my friends. We were young, we were brash, we were full of piss and vinegar, and we just wanted to bring Wingdings to the masses at any cost, even if that meant violence, well, especially violence. We got in touch with the Black Panther movement, who seemed much more in line with our philosophy. And so what we would do is we would construct Molotov cocktails, and instead of rags, we would stuff papers with Wingdings all over them, set them on fire, and throw them into windows of bookstores. It wasn't until later that we realized that the fire was completely consuming whatever evidence of Wingdings we had. So eventually we just started to wrap pieces of paper with Wingding text, our own personal manifestos, if you will, around bricks and just whipping them at people in parks. that resulted in a lot of arrests. My best friend was actually taken in by the police and had the hose sprayed on him, and I remember them calling him a wingding dinger.
See, in this world that we live in, what's really wrong is that we like to think as human beings that we know everything, when in reality we don't know everything. So why not use Wingdings? Because if you are turning in work and papers and documents using legible font, then you are just deluding yourself when you could just use Wingdings and be truthful.
Let me just tell you that the modern use of Wingdings is a bastardization. To see Hannah Montana spelled in Wingdings across billboards is an affront to everything my friends and I worked for the past 40-odd years. It angers me, to be quite honest, and I don't really know what we can do now because the machine, the bourgeois font machine has taken over.
And so, when my students turn in work with Arial and Times New Roman, I can read those things. And that's just pretentious. Why would you want to read something? I mean, my little nephew, who's 3 years old, he can read. So if he can read it, and if everybody can read it, then why not just go with Wingdings, where you can just experience and live through it?
I saw a Bleach commercial that was entirely in Wingdings on the TV the other day, and I just got so angry I threw my shoe at the TV. I had to go buy another TV, which was another experience because there all of the coupons that they handed out at the Sears store were in, of course, Wingdings. It's disgusting. It's just highly, highly disgusting. Wingdings is, honestly, the purest form of expression for any human being anywhere.